Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me. I am still Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com. It is still in the description below. It is your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any of our platforms. Reach out to me for pricing. I am still Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com. Today we are discussing a launch from the late 1990s that was part of the Missions series. This is the Omega Speedmaster Professional Moonwatch Gemini XI, dedicated to the memory of the September 1966 two-man spaceflight involving Charles Conrad Jr., Richard F. Gordon Jr., and notable for a series of docking maneuvers that involved tethering to other vehicles and structures while in space, setting the stage for later docking, tethering, and mooring operations in the era of Apollo, space shuttles, and space stations. Now, the watch you see right here is said to be one of 200 made for the Missions pack. This is a 42 millimeter steel watch that is 14.7 millimeters thick from lug tip to lug tip. If we're just talking about the case, 48 millimeters. If we include end link to end link, then the total distance across the wrist is 53.2 with a 20 millimeter spacing between the lugs. This is a box stock Moonwatch by the standards of the late 90s, with the exception of the fact that it does have a completely customized dial. Now, that's the mission patch from Gemini 11. But the watch cuts the figure of a traditional Moonwatch, which feels very contemporary in terms of its size and wrist presence today, so it must have felt absolutely enormous to wear something nearly identical back in September of 1966. This would have been a giant by the standards of its age. You can see from over the top that the end links push out to the edge of my wrist, but you can see from down the barrel that the lugs are still well inboard of the edge of my wrist. Now, it's not a thin watch, but the biggest frustration to a tight sleeve is going to be the cantilever of the bezel, so just keep that in mind. Sports jackets and dress jackets should clear it just fine. I recommend it for a wrist of 15 centimeters circumference or larger on the bracelet. The bracelet, you can see, features a bit of a conforming end link. This is not Nautilus levels of integration, but it closes the gap to the case. We have staggered alignment size and polished intermediates with an ovoid cross section and polished outer faces. The removable links are fixed by pins and sleeves, which is how it would have been done in 1997-1998 when this watch was originally in production. Now, the watch, you can see, has a clasp internal that shows you the references relevant to this bracelet. It is a snapshot single fold deployant with a thick gauge steel swing arm and shell. And then there are two pairs of divots drilled internally, so you can use your strap tool to change the anchoring point of the bracelet to fine tune the fit. The closure still has a snappy closure action with a loud report and a click and a clack as you open and close it. The case, lyre-style lugs, first introduced on the initial professional model of the Speedmaster, and that has been a signature of Seamasters and Speedmasters since the early 60s. Inward bevels and outward bevels, with the outward bevels polished and continuing all the way across the midcase. A thin, longitudinally satinated midcase. You can see the underside of the bezel is polished. The tachymeter insert is made of anodized aluminum, and you can use the tachymeter in conjunction with the chronograph seconds hand to gauge the speed of something moving relatively quickly. Generally, a race car over a kilometer is the example used, but if you want to use some mental decimals, you might up the ante to aerospace velocities and then read the speed of an airplane or a rocket off of the tachymeter. The dial is matte black. The crystal is Hesalite or thermoplastic. Thermoplastic preferred for space missions because while it's easier to scratch than sapphire, it is harder to shatter it, and thus there is less of a chance of debris in zero gravity. That's why the plastic or thermoplastic has always been preferred by NASA for flight. Now, this watch was built just after the changeover from tritium to luminova at Omega, so this original Gemini 11 dial features full luminescence, including a luminescent chronograph seconds hand. We have sunken and dished sub-registers for running seconds, minutes, and hours. And then it's all matte black to resist glare with white varnished hands for high visibility. And we're going to jump ahead a little bit on the case back because while Gemini 11 was delightful, most people get into these watches because the Speedmaster Professional was, yes, flight qualified by NASA for all manned space missions, including extravehicular activities. That's your spacewalking. But then it was also the first watch worn on the moon, which a lot of folks like to share at parties or events where your non-watch literate friends might wonder what it is you find so intriguing and captivating about these things. Most people can relate to the first watch worn on the moon as being a very cool thing. The watch has a push-down crown and 50-meter water resistance. The movement inside is based on the Lemania 1873 a famous base caliber, very rugged, tested to high impact, durability, temperatures, and pressures by NASA. It's a manual wind with a 48-hour power reserve, 18 pivot joules, a 3 hertz beat rate, and while it does not have hacking, does feature a super crisp cam operation. The function cycler being a cam, you might expect it to be indistinct, but even as of the late 90s, Lemania and Omega were so good at tuning these things that they feel as crisp as a column wheel. And it has a lateral clutch, which, while not quite as precise in its engagement as a vertical clutch, is more durable against shock. If you love this watch, reach out to me. I am T. Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.